Well, if he was actually doing that, he'd be voting for Bernie. Manchin represents the state that Trump won in the 2016 race for the White House by 40 percentage points. Well, yeah, West Virginia, home of Hickbillies. Registered trademark, Hickbillies. The West Virginia senator endorsed Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton that year, but later said he regretted doing so given her critical remarks about the coal industry. Manchin was also on the fence in the 2012 presidential election between Obama and Mitt Romney. Yeah, because this guy is not a progressive. He is a conservative. And people in West Virginia are too goddamn stupid to see it. Wake up! Wake up!
Folks, a progressive is not somebody who drives a Subaru and stops for pumpkin spice lattes. That's not a progressive. We have in years past gone through what a real progressive is, it just wanes. What's that?
I don't like pumpkin spice. Who are you talking about? Then again, we did have snow, frost on the pumpkin. Never mind. Let's move on from there.
I'm holding back.
Let's move on from there. Oh boy! And speaking of, I want to get to this story. We kind of promised each other we'd just get to this.
Before we jump to that, I wanted to add to what you were saying. This has happened before. This is deja vu all over again. Okay, in 1972, the Democratic Party. This is from CNN. Controlled by old-school political bosses like Chicago Mayor Richard Daley. We're talking establishment, old-school, crusty bosses. And AFL-CIO President George Meany. Their preferred candidates that year were Senator Muskie and Senator Humphrey of Minnesota, because both Muskie and Humphrey were thoroughly beholden to the party machine. Thoroughly beholden. A guy named George McGovern. I know this quite well because it was my first campaign that I actually became active in.
Mm-hmm.
George McGovern, a liberal senator from South Dakota, yes, such a thing did exist once, blew their plans up by winning the nomination. This is a Bernie Sanders equivalent. He was a genuine progressive, and he was honestly against the Vietnam War. However, that nomination threatened to end Daley and Meany's stranglehold on the party. Mm-hmm. So this goes way back. This is 72. Daley and Meany, the 1972 version of the Democratic establishment, to follow through this comparison, decided 4 more years of Richard Nixon would be preferable to handing the party over to an anti-war radical like McGovern. Is this not the same theme, the same plot with different characters? The establishment bosses say, we would rather lose to Donald Trump than hand over the party steering wheel to a radical like Bernie Sanders. In this case, it was McGovern. They sat on their hands for the remainder of the election, and we know who won by a historic landslide.
Mm-hmm.
What misery resulted from that election? However bad it was, Darren, it will be pale to what will happen to the misery ahead of us 1 year from now if they stop a progressive again and lose to Trump.
That's absolutely correct.
It's horrific, the thought of it, and the consequences could be the end of all politics.
Last chance, folks. Better wake up. You better wake up.
The Democratic Party political machine is your enemy. You can laugh at Fox. You know they're ridiculous, but it's the guys with Democrat on their hat, but neoliberalism in their heart and corporate allegiance in their back pocket. Those are the guys that are strangling us.
They certainly are. Yeah, they're strangling us using our own rope. It's unreal. I don't understand why these... I do understand, because nobody researches politics anymore because it's either boring or it's too depressing or it's whatever. And politics has become a popularity contest. Oh, I've heard that name before. I'll vote for him. Oh, I've heard that name before. I'll vote for her. Oh, she's a celebrity. I'm going to vote for her. He's a celebrity. Yeah, that's what you get with Trump.
People, it's too much work, Darren. In 1955, 6 people out of 100 thought it'd be a good idea if the military had its own rule and say without any input. There's a name for that. I'm not sure what you call that type of military. But that was 6 out of 100.
Yeah.
Today, the same poll, same question, is 6 out of 10.
Jeez. Nuts. People are nutty.
Democracy takes a hell of a lot of work. Don't just hand it over to the corporations. They'll run it for you. They'll tell you how life should be.
Oh, exactly. I want to continue the story from the Hill. During the interview with Cavuto, Manchin was critical of the Medicare for All plan championed by Sanders. Quote, Bernie keeps saying Medicare for all. I said, Bernie, we can't even pay for Medicare for some. End of quote. Oh, really? I think Bernie has explained where he's going to get the funds for this. Oh, we can't pay for that. We can't afford it. Yeah. There you go, Joe. Isn't it funny? Biden and Manchin both are Joe's. Well, I won't say anything because Joe Alder might be listening. Hey, Joe. Yeah, when are you going to join us on the show again? Have a little reunion here. The West Virginia Democrat did acknowledge the Sanders policies are thought-provoking and, quote, get the blood going and stirring and everything, end of quote. Manchin's response comes after Sanders said in an interview with CNBC that he was confident Manchin, along with Senator John Tester, Democrat of Montana, would support his agenda. In the interview, Sanders said, quote, damn right they will, end of quote. Well, I don't know. They got Manchin saying he won't. Manchin pandering to the conservative morons over a Fox propaganda channel. Yeah, come over to my house. You won't get that on my satellite dish. It's blocked, and I'm the only one with the password prying out of my cold, dead hands. I'm serious. You know what I'm going to get? Here, I tell you what, Christmas is coming up, folks. Got bad news for you. Christmas is coming up. If anybody wants to get me a gift for Christmas, get me one of those little keychains that you put on. It's got the little fob, and it's got all the television codes in it to shut it off.
Hey, there's an idea. Just go around hotels on Saturday morning, shutting off Fox News.
Exactly.
Walk in, have a glass of orange
Restaurants, hotels,
just zap
bars, just zap. Dead. Serious?
Well,
get me one, please. Somebody get me one, because I'll use it. I'm to the point now. If I walk into a restaurant and they've got that crap on the TV, I turn around, I walk out.
Well, it's ubiquitous.
And I might let them know.
I don't stay at a lot of hotels, but the little travel I have done, you go down for your morning breakfast, and it's wall to wall CNN, or excuse me, Fox.
Yeah, well.
Not much difference.
Not. It's getting to that point. You know what I wish for? I wish for the good old days when news was news and opinion was opinion, and it was pointed out as commentary with a Chiron graphic on the screen. You know, like the good old days around this town, Jack. Back in the good old days of the 70s and 80s when George Lyons, who was then the general manager of WZZM-TV, would do a commentary, and it would say editorial or commentary right on the screen, right above his big bushy eyebrows.
Well, what was the guy's name that would smoke a cigarette? The journalist, Murrow.
Edward R. Murrow.
Edward R. Murrow. I remember my mother watching him. There is no mainstream media voice that will lead you out of the darkness. There were some at one time. You know, Ed Schultz is gone. They fired him and anybody else. But there was some great journalists that helped bring a beacon of light to people's understanding. You don't hear, Al Green last week said that Trump is no better than those who burn crosses. That's a comment that is a stark manifestation and illustration of the racism inherent in the Trump administration. Right? That's from Al Green. I believe he's a senator.
Yeah.
I told my longtime friend, I'm not going to mention her name right here, if you're staying in the house, would you watch CNN, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, and see if you hear that quote today? I know when it came out, you're not going to hear that quote. We were in Europe last summer. I was amazed at the types of things, I'm not going to give you actual, that you heard in foreign countries. that you aren't allowed to hear here. For example, at that time, it was how much money we gave to the people down in Venezuela to fight against the duly elected president of that country. Mm-hmm. That number was flashed on the bottom of the screen. You're not going to see anything like that here.
No.
We are fed establishment pablum. We're raised on it.
Yeah.
And here we are in the mess that we are.
News divisions in this country used to be separate from their entertainment divisions. Not anymore. Not anymore. Jack, I want to move on, and I want to get to this story here. This is Quinta Jurecic writing for The Atlantic. This is dated Thursday. The headline is, "The Humiliation of Katie Hill Offers a Warning." Representative Katie Hill's brief career in Congress unwound in the same way that Ernest Hemingway described bankruptcy taking place. Gradually and then suddenly. On October 18th, the right-wing outlet RedState published an article alleging sexual relationships between Hill and two staffers, along with an explicit photograph of Hill. Other right-leaning publications picked up the story and it began rocketing around Twitter. Most mainstream publications reported on the situation only after Hill released a statement on October 22nd denying the first alleged relationship and decrying the photograph's release as the work of her abusive husband. The next day, Hill released a second statement acknowledging her inappropriate relationship with the second staffer. The House Ethics Committee quickly announced an investigation. On October 24th, the Daily Mail released several additional explicit photos. On October 27th, Hill resigned. The Hill scandal is an uncanny feeling. It is both very familiar. The political sex scandal is quite literally a phenomenon as old as this country, and yet placed in a context that makes it appear strange and dreadful. As I wrote in Lawfare before Hill's resignation, this is the first instance of which I am aware when a politically aligned publication has published an explicit photo of an opposition politician for apparent political gain. It's both a sign of how ugly the political landscape could become and a reminder of how ugly, for the many ordinary people who have suffered this kind of abuse, the world already is. Right-wing media has been getting a great deal of mileage out of the supposedly titillating nature of Hill's love life. Hill was one of the first members of Congress to identify publicly as bisexual, and the campaign staffer with whom she was in a relationship is female. An inordinate amount of media coverage is focused on the fact that the staffer was involved with both Hill and her husband. They've got in parentheses here, the right-wing political commentator Kurt Schlichter wrote on Twitter, quote, "This is a whole lot less hot than you might think," end of quote. Putting aside the leering, though, the story is appalling and sad. By her own account, Hill engaged in a profound breach of responsibility by engaging in a sexual relationship with someone who was working for her, and by doing so while running for public office. In her final speech on the House floor Thursday, she said, quote, "The mistakes I made that brought me to this moment will haunt me for the rest of my life," end of quote. Members of Congress are no stranger to bad behavior. But in a time when Americans are remapping the difficult landscape of sex and power in the workplace, it would be willfully naive to shove aside the uncomfortable dynamics of Hill's relationship with a staffer who was almost a decade her junior and a recent college graduate. Yet all of this must be separated from the question of whether or not the photos of Hill should have been made public. That at least has a clear answer. No. The photographs fit into the category of what is colloquially called revenge porn and what experts call non-consensual pornography, explicit images of a person that may or may not have been taken consensually, but that are released to the public without the victim's approval. Hill stated in her speech that the photos of her, quote, "were taken without my knowledge, let alone my consent," end of quote. She has blamed her husband, whom she is divorcing, for the photos' release. If her allegations prove true, she will be far from alone. As the law professors Marianne Franks and Danielle Citron, a colleague of mine, write, the release of sensitive images or video against the will of the person depicted, quote, "is often a form of domestic violence," end of quote. The vast majority of victims of this practice are female, though not all. Former Texas Representative Joe Barton appears to have been a victim of the practice in 2017. And though research is scant at this point, sexual minorities may be particularly vulnerable. Ari Ezra Waldman, the founder and director of the Institute for Cyber Safety, says that non-consensual pornography of gay women may most commonly be released, quote, when women come out as lesbians after breaking up with men, end of quote.